All right, let's go ahead and get this started. Michael, I want to welcome you in today. Um, Everybody else who's joined the webinar to kind of go over SaaS Defense and SaaS Protection. Michael's from Datto. Can you give us a little bit more background about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Mike DePalma. I'm the Senior Channel Development Manager for North America here at Datto. Our team's a little bit unique. We're kind of the public-facing arm of Datto, and so we go around. We do a lot of these presentations, sit on panels with either industry experts or folks from the FBI, Department of Homeland Security. So a lot of the stats and the stories we talk about today are going to be, following in line with what we're hearing from them as well.
Great, thank you. And for those who don't know me, my name is Joshua Holloway. I'm the CEO for Seventh Dimension. We leverage a lot of their tools to help protect our clients. And we just want to kind of take this time to showcase the capabilities so people understand what they need to be doing to protect themselves, and that not everything is protected in the cloud. And this is some of the things that we have to be looking at. So Michael, with your guys' tools, we're talking about overall, like protecting Microsoft 365, protecting Google G Suite. Really, what's it about out there that they're not doing to protect us that we should be doing better, either as an MSP for our clients, or clients should be looking at their own data?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the misconceptions about Microsoft 365 and Google Workspace and really all the SaaS applications is that, the reason I'm hosting this up in the cloud is because we're backed up by these very strong, secure clouds. The reality is there is what we call a shared responsibility model, where they are telling the users, the tenants, that, yeah, you bear responsibility protecting that data, because most of the time, these aren't brute force attacks. These are somebody opening the door and letting them in. So it is very critical, and they'll be very open and honest talking about working with third parties for both the intrusion side of things and as well as the backup side of things. So,
Great. Yeah. So a lot of this protection also kind of pertains to ransomware or backdooring into the Office 365 platform. I know that there's a hack out there. You can watch a video which pretty much shows you how they can get connected. So yeah, go over that a little bit if you don't mind.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what we're seeing the big rise in. And we've been talking about ransomware out in the industry for as long as I've been at Datto, 7 years. And, 7 years ago, people weren't paying attention, right? They're looking at their phones as they're out in the audience. And now either more people have been hit themselves, they have vendors that were hit, other people in the area. And so they're starting to see the momentum. And there's so much money to be made. I saw a stat in a previous presentation from one of they called ethical hackers. So they go out and do all that stuff. They said that the amount of money made in just the cybercrime space would make it the 9th largest economy in the world, right above Canada and Brazil. That's the type of money that's out there. And unfortunately, the way it's very hard to catch these guys, and they could just cast this huge, large net, to try to, attack as many businesses of all shapes and sizes. The big one, you have up on screen, obviously, is the pipeline, which two things really came out of that in the small business community. One, you saw and say, okay, well, why are they attacking me? These guys paid $4 million, right? That's what the criminals are going for. Or the other side is throw your hands up in the air. What chance do I have? The thing with all these attacks is you could find the gap in how these guys got in. So there is always that way when you do those forensics. So there are ways to protect yourself.
Yeah, not only are there ways to protect yourself, I think the other thing is a lot of people have the mindset of, it's not me, I'm not a target. And I think the statistic was it like 95% of small businesses end up getting hit every year in some way, somehow. Yeah. And everybody should get out of the mindset that it's not necessarily they're not a target. They should get the mindset that everybody's a target. And I think they see it every day in their email if they paid attention to it. And that's the phishing attacks. That's people, like you said, casting out that net to see who clicks a link and starts to give up free information. I think the most sophisticated ones is the ones where their Office 365 is telling them that their password has expired and they need to click here now, which either sends out a piece of software or gets them to provide the credentials for Office 365.
Yeah, and they're smart. When are they going to hit you with that? Probably in the morning, right? As you're checking through all your emails and you're like, oh, I'm not going to have access to it. Let me just do this real quick, right? And they look good. These are not the long lost uncle promising you $1 million in his will type emails. These are, when they say socially engineered spear phishing attacks, they're going to make that email look like every other email you got from Microsoft, or if it's Verizon or PayPal. We see all at Netflix. They want to, and the problem is, even if they get your credentials to Netflix, they also know that so many people repeat the same passwords, I'm sure. So password management comes into play here too.
Right, that's the other thing to consider. Do you have any of the other instances that you can think of where people have gotten phished that was like a pretty bad hack? I know I have a story, but I want to see what you have.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many of them. And you see how opportunistic these guys are. We saw a lot of attacks on the healthcare industry last year. We also saw a lot of attacks on municipalities and school systems.
Mhm.
So up in Hartford, I'm up in Norwalk, Connecticut, so about an hour and a half north of us in Hartford. The day before the opening day of school, and this was last year when we first came back, right? No more remote learning. They got hit. One of the internal staff clicked on a phishing email. They got hit, and they didn't have time to notify the parents. People were dropping off their kids at school, and every school was closed.
Yeah.
Waiting at the bus stop. And so, simple things, not having those protocols in place, disrupted the entire city.
Yeah, one of the biggest ones for us was those emails that look like they came from your boss. That's
Mhm.
the one we've seen most people kind of fall prey to, just because the name says that that's their name. They don't check the email address. We actually had a client fall prey to that, where they ended up giving the social security numbers, the home addresses, the salary of every employee, and they were a very large staffing agency to the tune of about a $500 million a year in revenue. And the CEO ended up providing um, was the services to protect their like LifeLocks, their social
Yeah, right.
security, to run the background check, to freeze all that stuff. He ended up doing that for a year to kind of help out. It was pretty nasty.
Yeah. Yeah, and they're good. And those emails are to the other piece. They look like they're coming internally. Could also be a wire fraud. Hey, send this. I need you to send this really quick to a client, and that money leaves and they never get it back. So yeah, we're seeing a lot of that.
So with all the hacking and other things there too, I think what we should kind of hit on is like, where does the SaaS protection come in? Where we're backing up the Office 365, or we're backing up G Suite? Like, what does that truly mean? Like for me and you, we understand that that's going to a separate location, but like kind of give the overall on that protection point, and then we'll talk about the defense and the anti-phishing.
Yeah, I mean, so the protection part, when we're talking about just backing up that data, you have to view this data the same as you would on-premise data, right? We've seen this huge sprawl. We kind of joke in the industry that, we all knew that this was going to get to this point, this kind of work from anywhere environment. It accelerated about 10 years and 10 months out of necessity, right, with the pandemic. So now that we're working there, there's a lot of critical data that lives up there. So it has to be backed up. They will tell you it should be backed up. It needs to be backed up on an off-site in a different place, right? I mean, in the instance of Datto, we've got 2 data centers here in the States, one in Pennsylvania and one out in Utah. So the geo redundancy is key here. So the mindset really needs to be, where is my data and where's that next copy of my data for everything that's critical?
Mhm. No, it's true. I mean, we've used it. We've used it to protect a couple of our clients where the sensitive data was inadvertently deleted to help protect somebody, and then we ultimately brought it back for an investigation. And that initially they thought it was lost, but the fact that the backup was happening so often, we were able to recover that data to help them out in a litigious way. So I mean, that was that one point where that was super important
Yeah.
for that one
And
client.
there's other pieces. I mean, even if an employee leaves, and they have all of their emails and all of that, the data that they might have, it's nice to just, instead of paying for that license in perpetuity, if they've got critical information, if you're a company that gets audited 7 years later or whatever that is, it's nice to have that repository with all that data.
Now with the protection in place, they also have the defense portion, right? That's the anti-phishing, that's the anti-spam. Let's go into that one a little bit too, because it's kind of a 1-2 punch, right? You're backing up the data, so you always have a snapshot, and it's not just your email too. When you're backing up G Suite, or you're backing up Office 365, you're actually getting all of G Suite or all of Office 365. That's all of Teams. That's all of SharePoint. That's all those little nooks and crannies where you think you may have data, or you're not thinking that you have data and something inadvertently gets deleted, and that's how you protect it. But kind of dive into the defense side of it too, please.
Yeah, and that's just as critical. When you're looking at any of these things, it's a multi-layered approach, right? So, we talk about the full kind of circle. There's the left-hand side of the boom or the attack or whatever that event is. That's the protection side. The right-hand side is the right-hand side is the protection side. That left-hand side, talking about security, yeah, that you definitely need to be trying to figure out, you can't just rely on the spam filter within your Microsoft 365, right? I mean, that's not enough. One of the things that, trying to figure out how to keep up with these folks, because there are vulnerabilities and there's new viruses coming out every single hour. And so instead of looking for those, what we use is, it's actually kind of artificial intelligence based, where it's looking for, it has a repository of all the known things out there, and if it sees an anomaly, something that's different, it's automatically going to go and take a look at that, and then put it back into the AI engine. So now it is a trusted or it's a not trusted piece. That way, it's continuously learning to see these new threats that are out there. So obviously, the ultimate goal is to make sure you never get hit. Right, and you prevent everything, and so that's what we're trying to do on the protection side, and it really needs to be bundled. It's not one or the other. Security is not just a commodity. It has to be a mindset. It starts with the protection and the defense on the front end, and then the backup on the back end.
Yeah, it's not like an a la carte thing. Like, you can't just pick
Right.
and choose. You want to protect this portion, but you forget about this portion, because them getting in through the spam filter or the phishing, that's huge. That's super huge.
Yeah.
I know, utilizing the same tool, we deployed it within our organization, and I saw in the first day a reduction of about 40 emails, and every one of them was your Office 365 password's about to expire, and I had the remainder be, I think it was like 20 different voicemails from 20 different phone vendors that we've never even used, that I needed to click to listen to the voicemail. So it was those things like that.
See that time and time again.
So going over, the overall systems, we can see where, like, employees cause data loss, right? They cause data loss for the businesses, they cause data loss overall, just because they're clicking on things, they're giving up information. What are there ways other than, just trying to train them to be mindful, like, and utilizing tools like this? Like, what other things could you think of that you may want to, kind of hit on, where it's being due diligent? Like, for me, I would say, like, every time you hit reply on a message and you just get that twinge in the back of your head, look at the email address. Like, what would you add, to that, if we were to tell somebody, or we're telling all these people today on the webinar?
Yeah, I mean, there's some very simple things. If you could I could make my name in my email, whatever, the from box, whatever it is. But if you
Right.
scroll over it, you're going to see that, hey, it's not M DePalma at Datto, it's M DePalma at XYZ, blah, 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 blah. So simple things, scrolling over, it's any kind of hyperlink, same thing. I've seen really good phishing emails where there are legitimate hyperlinks that are going back to whatever, to Verizon or whatever, but the one that they want you to click is the malicious one. So they're very good. So a lot of times it's simple things like that. It's looking for simple things, like if it says hi customer instead of your name, like, right, some simple things that would jump off the page at us, but they're very good at what they do.
And I think that goes back to the slide that I brought up right now, where you said it looks very convincing, right? Here we have like an email message where it looks like it's from Microsoft. It says anti-spam. Like, it's really kind of drawing their attention down to, following a link, clicking that link. And that's kind of what we want to drive home, right? We want people not only to use these services so they don't have to worry about these emails, but for the people who are deciding that they're not the target, what are they actually going to do, mentally every time they open up a message? And that could be daunting too. And I understand that, some people are like, I don't want to be thinking about this every time. I just want to clean mailbox every day. But then I'm pretty sure a lot of people said that about their physical mailbox, 20, 30 years ago, when, chain letters was a huge thing. And junk mail is even worse today, right?
Yeah, I mean, it really does. It's like, if you're going to post anything, my old boss used to say, assume that whatever you write in an email is going to be on the front page of the New York Times one day, right? Would you want that out there? So I have this fear, like you, I reread my emails. I make sure they're going. The same thing on the front end of what you need to open. This screen right here, it's pretty interesting for anybody that doesn't know. So there's a gentleman by the name of Kevin Mitnick. At one point, it's a really cool story, interesting story. He's one of the most notorious hackers in the world back in the 90s. He's on the FBI's most wanted list. He got caught, went to jail. It was a very high profile arrest. He came out. Now he works with the good guys. It's like the movie Catch Me If You Can, right? So he works with the good guys. So this was a live virus that he created. And we actually hired him to come out to our annual conference. So he stood on stage, and it wasn't a click through. These are clicks, but I could show you the actual video. We'll give you a link to it afterwards. But he said, and this was 2019, so this is pre-pandemic. He said, if I was a criminal, this is exactly what I would be doing right now. He knew the next iteration was going to be attacking things like Microsoft 365. So this was a live virus. He did the demo. He had 2 laptops up, and he showed exactly what it would look like. And again, he knew how to create an email template that looked fresh and clean. It looks like every other thing from Microsoft. And typically they're going to send that out to you in the morning, and you've got a 9 o'clock meeting. You sit through a webinar like this and say, I got to be protected. Let me update this anti-spam pro. You click on it. And once you do, everything in your inbox is encrypted. You can't open anything.
Right.
And oh, by the way, and I'm sure you see it, and you could, when you talk to some folks that might be just being onboarded, a lot of times they just give everybody gives carte blanche admin access to everybody, right? It's just easier.
Yeah.
And if you have admin access, this can impact the whole domain. Do you see? And again, we're talking about simple things. I'm sure you run into businesses that are just like, well, we gave everybody admin access. Criminals
All the
love
time.
that.
Yeah. Every time. Almost every time. I can't say every time. Almost every time. It's actually amazing how often people just will click the button, admin all. We don't want to worry about it. Everybody can do what they need to do, but they don't realize that essentially, not only did they give the keys to the castle, they open the doors, they open the drawbridge, and everybody can just kind of come and go as they please. And I think, really today it's hitting. Ransomware was a huge thing on just the computers alone, right? They click a link and all of a sudden their desktop is encrypted, the files on their desktop are encrypted, and then it goes off to the drive letters, right? Where we're hitting today is now people need to realize that it's their email system, it's their SharePoint, it's their G Suite, it's everything that they hold near and dear that they thought may have been protected in the cloud, and Microsoft would restore that for you, or G Suite or Google would restore that for you. Like today, it's like this is a very real thing that can get encrypted now, that can get locked down, and you have no recovery because they both kind of say it's on you to protect that.
Exactly. And you think about this virus, this virus that was created by Kevin, that was 2019. Think about the evolution of that in the last 2 years, 2.5 years, right? These criminals are smart. Unfortunately, some of the best and the brightest are on that dark side, right? So they see the shiny object of, hey, this is where the data is going. This is where I'm going to go too. So the mindset of just, the only thing they're attacking is on-premise Windows-based servers. The reason for that is that's where most of the critical business data lived, right? And so they're going to go after where the data lives. As data starts to move in different places, they're going to follow it, right? And they know that the impact is not just stealing your data, it's causing your business to shut down. That's why you pay the ransom. That's the real piece there. It doesn't matter if your data is not necessarily valuable. Again, the false sense of security you mentioned before of a small business, well, they're not going to attack me. What is my data worth? Well, it's worth you keeping your doors open. So they're going to make you do that math that says, we're going to hold it until you pay us. And if not, go ahead and try to run your business without access to your data. I don't really care what industry you're in. You're not going to be able to do that anymore, right? So they know that's their big piece of leverage.
Yeah. And, on this next slide, I brought up kind of like what that would look like, if somebody inadvertently clicked the link and then all of a sudden it's asking access, right? So this is the thing to kind of be mindful. And I've seen this come up with me. I do this because we have to allow certain services to be tied in and things like this. You're really granting them full access to the entire suite at this point. I know we're hitting on the Microsoft side a little bit harder. And that's only because it's more popular with a little bit more of a target on its back because it's Microsoft. But like, these are the things you have to be mindful of, because if you have granted everybody admin access, any one of your employees who have that access could inadvertently get this link, click it, and then they've provided full access to the hackers trying to get in. And after that, anything's possible. You get the full encryption, you get all that other stuff. So I just kind of wanted to showcase that so people, they may see that and hit cancel, and then hopefully notify their IT provider and let them know this occurred. And obviously things can be kicked into effect where passwords are getting changed, access is getting changed, stuff like that. So, yeah. Do you have any other things you want to add onto the screen that I pulled up where people could see this potentially pop up?
Yeah, I mean, it looks legit. You could see he put in the 0 instead of an O in Microsoft, and he did that just as an example. But a real hacker's not going to do that, right? I mean, he just said to point out like, hey, there's simple things to look for, but that's going to look like every other email, right? And to your point, when we talk about the shared responsibility model, this is what we're talking about. Microsoft's not going to say they're going to say it's not my fault that you gave somebody access to your data, right? It's your responsibility. That data is your data. They're going to protect the integrity of their cloud is very strong. You're not getting brute force in there. It's so much easier for the criminals to do it this way.
That's you're back going through somebody else's access.
Right.
Yeah, no, it's pretty bad. So on this one, it looks like we have a, what is that, encryption key there? Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
So
the full
this
encryption of the messages. That's what they look like once they've been attacked.
Yep. And you would see that throughout all your entire inbox, no access to anything. And the only email in this instance that was able to be open is the one from Kevin saying, "Hey, pay me some money." I think that's the next slide.
Yeah, I'd like the
Pay
fifty
me some
thousand
money.
dollars. This one right here.
Yeah, and they'll do it a lot of different ways. Usually it's this scary red screen. Sometimes there's a little timer going and saying, "Hey, you could pay me now $1,000. If you don't, 24 hours from now, it's going to be 2,000." Right? So they put that sense of urgency. Sometimes it looks like tech support. "Hey, we noticed something. Click here and we'll help you walk through it. Oh, you got to pay us in Bitcoin," and
Yeah.
they're creative.
Well, I was gonna touch on that because I think a couple of years ago, everybody got inundated with that little screen after browsing the internet that was a web page that was infected. It would pop up and say, "Hey, you have a virus or you need support." And then they would click on that and then enter credit card information, maybe end up on the phone with somebody. But the whole entire time they're infecting their system. I mean, the look and the feel is relatively the same.
Yep, absolutely.
So this is the gentleman that performed the act, right?
Yep. Yeah, this is Kevin. And we've got like a 7-minute video of him actually showing it. He had and come into our studio and do it. So if anybody wants to take a look at it in action instead of just having the theoretical conversation, you'll be watching a live virus and you see how quickly he's able to get in.
Yeah, we'll make that link available afterwards, especially if anybody's super interested in hit us up. We'll provide that link. Obviously, we don't want to play that here right now and sit through a 7-minute video of us not talking, just kind of watching this go through.
Right.
So this one overall is like 70% of organizations will, have some kind of a business disruption. And really it's what 90% of those businesses that don't have those protections pretty much will shut down. And I think those are scary numbers. Luckily, every instance I've ever ran into, people were able to recover. That was awesome. I also never wanted to have that over my head that I was the reason why I caused somebody's doors to shut permanently. So you got to push these ideals when it comes to security, when it comes to backups, when it comes to protection, should really be at the forefront of any IT provider, any IT department, any securities team, anything like that. And, so really, if you take anything away from here, it's ask the questions. If we're not your IT provider, ask the questions of your IT provider and have them show you. It should take them 30 minutes to an hour to provide some kind of reporting back to you to let you know that you're fully protected. And if they can't, ask them why not. And really don't sleep at night if you don't have these things in place. Because I know as an IT provider, a lot of people ask me, like, what keeps you up at night? And it's like the one client that absolutely refuses to protect themselves. And you're on the hook, and
yeah, 100%. I mean, it almost is. Well, I'll tell you, I mean, if you look at it, you want to see how important it is, go fill out a cybersecurity insurance application and see how much thicker that's getting. So, and they are really just telling people you're uninsurable. I've done a lot of presentations with those folks and they are losing money. The insurance industry doesn't typically lose money, right? So when they now see a sector where they're losing money, what's his ground zero? Certain things you need to have multi-factor authentication. You need to show me where those backups are. Are you testing those backups? Because even if you do get the coverage and you do get hit and you didn't really do all of those things that you checked off, they're going to say, "Hey, it's not on us."
Right, and they'll drop you on the coverage, or they just won't stand up to it because you failed to do one of the things. A lot of times when we're doing the cybersecurity insurance questionnaire form, like we really sit down with the clients, kind of go over it and say, okay, we've talked about these policies before. Now the insurer is telling you this is what you have to do. If you don't do sections 1 through 8, they will not cover you. So really take that into account. That means we're meeting on a quarterly basis. That means we're crossing T's and dotting I's, making sure that you hit everything that cyber liability is required to be fully funded. So if something does happen, they can't turn back and say, well, you missed line A-26 subsection C, where you forgot to turn on to MFA and show us proof. you know.
Even if you're not going to apply, it's still good. It's a good exercise to go through one of those applications and make sure that you could check off the boxes because and then understand why the boxes exist, right? Why do they care about this? So even if you're not in the industry, you don't want to go pay money for cybersecurity insurance, it's still a good exercise to go through one of those applications because at least it's highlighting where some gaps might be.
Oh, very much so. And then ask for reports. If you make it through that and you haven't asked for a report from anybody, either in your IT team or your department or provider, you're just kind of setting yourself up for failure. Now, on that shared responsibility model, kind of segueing from the insurance, like this slide breaks down exactly like where does responsibility lie. And I think this is a super important slide because Microsoft's just ensuring that they're keeping the lights on and the system runs, right? And then the customer, you can see where their responsibility lies. You want to kind of pick through this one a little bit, Michael?
Yeah, this goes to, we were talking about before. I mean, their cloud is going to be very secure. So when they're talking about what their responsibility is, it's the hardware that lives in there. If there happens to be a disaster within one of their data centers, any sort of failure, power outage, those things, that's on them. But the customer, the tenant, as they, with your data,
Right.
they are not going to protect against human error, malicious insiders that we were talking about earlier, the hackers. Their responsibility is their stuff, like their hardware. The data that's yours and who has access to it, that's on you. So that's how they view that shared responsibility model. And they're very open about it. If you watch any presentation, they will say that they will just specifically reference the shared responsibility model.
Yeah, I think that's always the fallback. There's been a couple of times we've talked with Microsoft, and we have a little bit of a different relationship with them. Our support agreement's a 1-minute response from their team, and we've asked for mailboxes back, and they're like, "Sure, we'll try," And then you get that email 24 hours later going, "Yeah, we weren't able to do it," and having these other tools in place is how you bring that back, how you get that recovery, how you get that data. Because almost 9.99% of the time from Microsoft is we tried, even though who knows what they did on their side.
Right. Yeah, I mean, they're not in the business of backup disaster recovery, right? So,
Right.
yeah.
So this is a portion of their SLA where they're stating kind of like, hey, we do what we can to keep the lights on, we do what we can to keep everything else running, but ultimately we can't be held liable for your inability to back up or protect or recover.
Yeah. And they openly encourage the third party backup. And we've done a lot of joint stuff with them. We've got a good relationship with them. So they're not hiding that.
Oh, that's good. And here's a little bit more information from their SLA. So yeah, I think Microsoft and Google have both kind of really hit really hard. Like, if it wasn't a natural disaster, it's pretty much not on us. Good luck.
Right. Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
the same stance too. Like, you can't go back to Microsoft and say, hey, well, we got ransomware on our server, even though it's a Microsoft OS. And where are you going? What are you going to do to help us decrypt our data, or what are you going to do to help us, recover? Their answer is like, Ernest, is on you, right? Like, we've provided the operating system, but we don't know what you did with it exactly.
Right. Right.
Yeah. And that speaks volumes, or speaks true to most cloud services.
Yeah. Yeah. The language within workspace is almost the exact same. I mean, it's the same structure. It's the same language in their SLAs and their user agreements and their on their forum. They have the same stance on that.
Yeah, and to kind of divert away from, obviously we're picking on Microsoft. We touched on Google a little bit. I think other people need to kind of ask questions of their other hosted cloud providers. There's so often that, we trust our CRMs in the cloud. We trust our employee databases in the cloud, or customer databases in the cloud. How often are people, checking with them saying, what's your backup and recovery? What happens if you guys get hacked? How long will we be down? How will we get our data back? That's huge questions. I think every cloud platform that we help our clients deploy, we get a detailed policy of what their true backup and recovery is, and estimated downtime. Aside from looking at Microsoft and Google, we do that with every other cloud provider. Just, AWS had an issue last week, and I think they had a large storage array issue, and it knocked several services down for 24 hours. And if people didn't know what was going on, like they could just be sitting at a standstill and then wondering where their data's at.
Right.
And who knows how AWS backs up their data and restores. And did you pay for that AWS restore in the event that they lost your data? So
Right.
really, kind of hitting home is just like you have to back up your local computer, if you have to back up your server, got to ask these questions about your cloud provider, or how are they protecting you? Kind of like with the SaaS defense and the SaaS protection. One, SaaS protection is backing up your data. SaaS defense is providing a spam filter and anti-phishing, right? So that's the super important part.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to, you talk about simple things, first steps, do an inventory of all of your on-premise data and all your SaaS applications. You'll be surprised that some departments don't even know that another department is using X, Y, and Z for different services. So take an inventory of it and then again, go through it and say, is there critical data here? How's it being backed up? What's that recovery time look like? Have that in your incident response plan, and then see if there are some gaps. That's when you go address them. But understanding that having it in an actual document is critical.
Yeah. No, it's and even for your cyber liability insurance, you have to do this investigation anyways. You're required.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then here's Google's limitations, basically saying you have a window and it's deleted.
Yeah.
Yeah. So good luck.
Yeah. It's exactly right. Yeah.
So I know we talked about it. Obviously, we know your guys' tools with the SaaS protection fully backed up the entire platform for Microsoft 365. We can totally back up Google Workspaces. That's everything found in the Google Suite tenant, just the same as the Microsoft 365 tenant. Do you have anything else that you might want to add to what the capabilities are, or what you're seeing with just the protection? Because I know we'll get to defense in here in a second.
Yeah, I mean, I think we talk a lot about the cybersecurity impacts, right, and all those different threats. But a lot of times, I'm sure you could attest to it. A lot of them are just file restores, right? Quick restores that somebody might have deleted a file. It's funny, my wife's in marketing, and she had an instance where one of the shared files she was working on was deleted, and she was all panicked. And I said, "Well, you call your MSP. I know you have Datto." And she was like, "You could do that?" And I was like, "Do you listen to what I talk about all day long?" We're stuck in a house together. She didn't know. And then, within a minute, there's that. So, it's also just thinking of, when I talked about that boom, like that incident can be something very simple as well. So that's another reason to be backing up this data. It doesn't necessarily have to be this huge disaster.
Right. Yeah. It can be as simple as one message. Like I said, we've done that where it was a singular message, and that message was huge for that client who needed it for a court hearing. So like that pays off in dividends in the long run.
Yeah.
So we've gone over the SaaS protection. I'm going to click through these. We have the SaaS defense. So this one, let's go over this one. We know it's anti-phishing, which, it's an advanced AI engine that's looking at how messages are coming in, kind of like how they got in, the headers, all that information, looking to see, is it a phishing attempt? And then there's a spam engine too. So you're kind of getting a 2-for-1 in that whole setup, so that your IT department or your IT provider, they only have to go to one location to control it all, right? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, this is all about speed, ease of use, and then what the tool is actually doing. And what we see is, a lot of these technologies, these really strong technologies on the defense side, they were happening at the enterprise level for a long time. And what we're seeing now, as the criminals are really attacking, things getting down to the same capabilities, but available at the price point for an SMB. And it's something that you really need to have. What are you doing on that intrusion side of things?
Yeah. So I mean, at the end, everybody needs to be protected, stay protected. Look at tools like this. Really ask the people that you're working with who are running your IT departments, what is it that they're actually doing overall to ensure this is protected. I mean, nobody wants to come into the office to find out that somebody in the payrolling department clicked a link that encrypted everything, or everyth's gone because somebody allowed the entire mailbox structure to get encrypted.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
that
I mean,
also,
and if you're working with somebody now in IT, whether it's internal, external, and they haven't had these conversations, you should be asking why not, right? Why haven't we already had these conversations about this stuff?
yeah, and I mean, training is huge. right? So at the end, obviously, there's a lot of different things you can train on. Why are people not doing regular training? It could be a 3-minute video that teaches you how to better protect your mobile device. Case in point, we just came across a cell phone the other day that was left in somebody's car. Nobody knew whose cell phone it was. I picked it up, charged it, and ended up being a friend of ours. No pin whatsoever on the phone. I like turned it on, clicked a button. I was like, all
Yeah.
right, let's turn this off.
Yeah.
Because you want them to have the
I didn't even know
but
those still
they didn't.
existed.
Yeah, they didn't
Yeah.
even take the time to protect their own phone. So it's simplistic things like that that kind of help people protect their data, protect access. Because that cell phone, if it was linked into the business email, I've now walked right into the business email. I could do whatever I want. I could send a message to the entire client base or the people that they're talking to. I can ask for money and none the wiser.
Change the password. Yeah.
Change passwords, all that fun stuff. And it's
Yeah.
that mindset that we have to kind of help people get out of, that like, oh, my phone, why do I need a PIN? But you do, because it's your data, and you may be connected to your office when you might inadvertently allow people access into that as well. So
Yeah, exactly. And
training,
it sounds
training.
cliched. Yeah, it's true. You'll see that click rates drop almost immediately as they get that culture security. It goes back to, this is not a commodity. All these great technologies, if you don't have the buy-in from your people, the criminals like that. They're going to follow the path of least resistance. So they're going to find that weak link,
Yeah, and it boils down to everything we've hit on today, right? Best practices. Protect your cloud, because it actually needs to be protected. It's not protecting itself. If you don't know how it's being protected, ask who. Get good policies in place to where you know that you've provided enough training that everybody should have a good awareness to even cut down those click rates, right? And then this really all kind of flows into cyber insurances, right? Like if you truly want to be protected, and have an instance where if this somehow makes its way through, you're protected all the way down to your insurance policy, so that there can be a payout, whether that's you're paying your MSP provider or your IT department overtime to decrypt everything or recover everything. It's not money out of pocket, it's money from the insurance provider. Because there's a lot of companies out there that have built their business structure on helping you recover. Not just putting the ransomware on your system, right? You have the bad actors, but then you have people who truly want to help.
And even beyond just insurance, you can think about compliance issues. They're always going to ask for this plan, right? If you get attacked, and most of the time, if you could show that you've done your due diligence and you've done your training and you've done all these things, and there are examples of malicious internal actors going out and doing some things, and then the compliance folks come down the company and they were able to prove, no, we went, here's our training process, and they signed off on all these stuff. It helped them on the liability issue with the government too.
Yeah, showing due diligence helps above all else. Obviously, being 100% would be amazing, but we're all human, right? We know we can't hit 100% of the time, right? So at least there's an attempt and a growth, because every month, every training is only going to get better. Everybody's going to get a little bit better, and it's going to get harder for those people to get in. Oh yeah, so you can talk about the layer defense model. Obviously you're trying to protect your data locally. You're trying to protect your endpoints, network protections, perimeter protections, all the way out, like you said, compliances, application protection. People have HIPAA concerns, PCI compliance concerns, and a lot of companies don't realize this, but they fall under PCI compliancy to some level because of the transactions that they do on a daily basis, and a lot of people don't think about that. And then obviously the physical and system protections too. So anything you want to add on these ones?
What I would add is anyone that's in your supply chain too, go and any vendor that you're working with, have them provide some sort of report or some sort of statement about what they're doing to protect their own house. So, I think that that's critical, because a lot of times that's how these criminals are getting in. That's why this SMB space is a target, because a lot of times they can get into the enterprise through hitting an SMB first. That Target hack that we saw a few years ago, Target didn't get hacked, their HVAC vendor got hacked. And that's how the criminals were able to get into it, right? So have these same conversations internally, but then also talk to everyone, that you're working with, and have them document that, they're doing their due diligence.
Yeah, we saw a client, they had a hack where it was their third party vendor got hacked. And because they used TeamViewer to help their clients with their software, they backdoored everybody's TeamViewer access and then, dropped a payload of ransomware to everybody. I know
Yep.
for us, we stopped it. Luckily, we stopped it right when it started coming in, but we know not so many people were as lucky, and yeah, that it really proves to having those conversations with your vendors or your third party providers. What are you doing to protect your own access? I think Sony could actually learn a little bit from that, from their hack. Was it like almost 10 years ago when everybody got into the PlayStation area and hacked them?
Yeah. Yeah, I did a webinar with the FBI agent who was assigned to that attack. And I was trying to get him off camera. He was telling me a lot of cool stories on it. But once we got on the webinar, he was things he couldn't share, but it was interesting. Those
Well,
guys,
that
if you
might,
ever get somebody at a bar who's an FBI agent, they got some good stories.
yeah. Well, and also if that matters still with like the DOJ, they're not allowed to talk about it.
Right.
Yeah, until it's fully
Yeah.
closed out. Yeah, you got it.
Yeah.
Well, really, in the interest of time, obviously, we want to thank everybody for joining today. This is not a hard sell thing. This is about teaching, right? We want people to understand that Microsoft and Google aren't necessarily backing up all your data or protecting you. Look at tools like the ones that we offer. Would we love for you to contact us? Great. That would be awesome. We can do assessments. We can help people determine what's needed to protect themselves, but really take this information and ask questions, right? That's how we begin to learn. Ask questions. Are we protected? Ask your IT providers, ask your IT departments. Are we truly doing everything that we can to protect ourselves? Michael, I want to thank you for coming on today and kind of showcasing your guys' platform. I know we use it. We help people use it as well. And thank you for your time. I appreciate that. And we kind of want to open up the floor for 10, 15 minutes to see if anybody has any questions that we could field right now. So I'd like to open up the floor to everybody. At this point, you should be able to just ask to unmute and take it from there. Or type in the chat if you have a question.
You have a question coming in via chat. There's one thing you would want the business executives to take away from this conversation. What would it be? I don't know if you want to start, me start, but
No, go ahead.
yeah, I mean, I would say again, instead, before you start getting in the weeds of the technology, put together an incident response plan and do the find out where your data lives, find out what training looks like, put it down, review it with your employees, and from there you start to fill in the gaps that you might have. But until you know exactly what your system is and where that data lives, you can't start having the conversation about what product does I need, because you can't solve it by just buying something off the shelf. So that would be my first step. Before you even have an evaluation, have somebody come in and just do an assessment. That is the first step. I mean, that's what I would recommend for sure.
I totally agree with you. The assessment is huge. I think for a lot of people, a lot of companies that we're talking to before they become clients, that's our first initial thing is we do a full assessment. We provide them a reports. When we provide our reports, it's not a sales thing. We don't come in with a quote or offering. It's here's your reports. Here's the holes. If you have an IT department, awesome. They have a launch port, like go from here and patch things up. If you want us to come in 6 months from now, or if you want us to help you do the thing, fine, we'll help you. But really, here's the information that you should know, that these are the problems that you're experiencing. These are the big glaring gaping holes that will be exploited at one point. So I wholeheartedly agree with the assessment approach. And there's a lot of different assessments out there that you can do. Some of them are pretty, I would be afraid of the free ones, like the free ones where you go online, you click a link and it provides an assessment. Really seek a company that provides the assessment and have them do it.
You always ask yourself, it's free, so how are they getting their money, right? A lot of times it's big data and stuff like that, but having that third party come in and look at it is critical. There's a lot of great information. You can Google a lot of different things. You're not going to Google your way into a security plan because everybody's different. There's not a cookie cutter answer to this. So to say, if someone asked direct questions about their business, we probably couldn't answer it until we took it offline and understood their systems. It's not a one size fits all when you're talking about cybersecurity.
Yeah, most definitely. And I think with those assessments or those reports, you should also be looking at like, is it just a network scan? Is it a security scan? Is it external vulnerability? Is it internal vulnerability? Like, ask the person who's providing that scan, like, what kind of data are you going to be getting back? Because if it's just a quick external vulnerability scan, that's not enough info for you, because people forget that they're creating vulnerabilities outbound. So from my computer out to the internet, what have I done or what have I opened up? And how will your guys' reports showcase that? And sometimes they'll actually have demo reports to share with you to see like, okay, this would be easy for me to read. This would be easy for me to share with my executive team. And, and we can understand this and kind of grow a plan from there. Looks like we got another one in. How should cybersecurity training and education be adapted for remote workforce? That's a great question. Go for that one, Michael.
Oh, especially for the remote workforce. I mean, it's in human nature to let your guard down when you're working from your kitchen or your home office, as opposed to, in a cubicle. Same thing with when we were talking about like wire fraud and things like that. It's a lot easier to look over your desk and say, "Hey, did you just send me this email?" But when you're sitting in your kitchen and your boss is in another place, they were able to seize on that, those criminals. So again, training is the most important thing, because we're probably in this kind of transient workforce. So you got to make sure that you feel just as protected when you're home as you are when you're in your office. And it starts with the people. We go back to people, processes, and technology.
Yeah, on top of that one, I think it kind of boils down to, if your company is allowing like bring your own device methodology for connecting from home, where you're using your own laptop, you're using your own desktop, you're then connecting to the office. That same laptop and desktop, is that used by anybody else in the family? Are kids getting on that? Are they doing their schoolwork at one time or another? That generates vulnerabilities. And depending on the type of business that you do, you may have violated some kind of a compliancy, and those are things that need to be talked about. Looks like
Another
we have
one.
one from Raymond. Says, when the HVAC third-party company got hacked, who is responsible? HVAC company or the company they were doing the work for? So that would be Target.
Mhm. Well,
But
Target had a huge fine on its back because a lot, it was the PCI information that was, sold down on the dark web. When you're looking at lawsuits and you're looking at liabilities, they're going to always go after the ones with the deeper pockets, right?